Whenever I use my assets, I liquidate that asset and I can no longer get compound growth. I can either choose compounding growth or I can liquidate my money.
Let's dive in right into a couple recent case studies with, again, actual capital gains tax solutions listeners who took action. So let's start with the first one. Mark, without giving any names, just kind of tell the story and what the challenge was and what you were able to help them achieve.
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah. And for your listeners, I want to say, I think the world of the people who've been willing and ready to take action. Find to hear another podcast, watch another YouTube. But those that took steps to improving, my utmost respect to them. One person in particular, very, very successful professional, white collar professional, was very interested in doing some deals and saw the kind of the inevitable tax that would come with having some success in real estate. And so this person reached out to me and we had a discussion. And I'll just say this up front. He already had a whole life insurance policy from an insurance agent that had set something up for him roughly 7, 8, 9 years ago. And it was even with a company that I had been aware of and understood. But it was not designed properly, and the policy was going to become taxable in just a few more years. And the amount of debt that was accumulating on that policy was so massive that it was costing this person almost $6,000 a month just to service the interest on the loan. So I better back up for just a quick minute and explain what is Bank on Yourself and how can it go wrong, that wrong. So it's a whole life insurance contract. The cash value on whole life insurance typically is $0 on old-fashioned whole life insurance. But if we can design it correctly, if we can minimize the commissions and minimize the insurance expense, then we can just massively overfund the policy and have tons more wealth in the policy on day one. In the first 30 days, you can typically see somewhere between 8 and 40 times more cash than the old-fashioned whole life that Dave Ramsey loves to hate on. So if it's designed correctly, it builds guaranteed on a guaranteed basis every year. You have liquid access to that money with no taxes due. You can usually borrow against the policy. And if it's designed the Bank on Yourself way, it will continue to grow as if you had not touched the money. And right there, that's the sweet spot for a lot of folks, a lot of the real estate investors. When I use any other asset, savings account, brokerage account, CD, money market account, self-directed IRA, whenever I use my assets, I liquidate that asset and I can no longer get compound growth. I can either choose compounding growth or I can liquidate my money. I can't have both at the same time with most financial vehicles. This policy allows us to do both. It's liquid access to money and continuous compound growth.
Excellent. Okay, so this gentleman had a poorly designed policy, and he was having to service $6,000 of interest on the loan of this policy. And so, talk us through what he was how you were able to design and transfer or move or start a new one there.
Yeah. Okay. So it was $6,000 a month, and for him, that was a lot of money. That'd be a lot of money for anybody. $6,000 a month just to service the debt. And remember, these are policies that do have policy loans on them, and the loan interest is an interest rate that's typically well below market rates if it was designed correctly. Typical annual percentage rates on these life insurance policies at good companies, let's say over 4 years, might be an APR, annual percentage rate of maybe 1-2%. But this loan had ballooned to such a degree and had such poor financial planning and coaching around it that it was really just becoming onerous for this client. So anyway, he reached out to me and said, Mark, I'm familiar with infinite banking, but what is Bank on Yourself and what makes it different? And so we talked about how it comes with there's only 200 Bank on Yourself professionals that have gone through the credentialing process to become Bank on Yourself professionals in the United States and Canada. We talked about how management of the policy and the design of the policy was, unfortunately for him, poorly designed. So it's not unlike any law contract. If you poorly design a contract, it can really mess you up. So my thought was, what can we do? We've still got several $100,000 in this policy that has not been loaned out. So what we were able to do after having a more in-depth financial consultation, not just selling an insurance policy, but having a true financial plan, a discussion, a financial consultation with this client, we said, all right, we're able to move over the money through a 1035 exchange. Does that sound familiar, Brett? A 1035 exchange, sort of like a 1031 exchange for real estate, but there's a part of the tax code called the 1035 exchange, which gives the policyholder the ability to, in a tax-free manner, transferring the cash value of life insurance from an old policy to a new one, usually with very little, if any, expenses to do that. So that's exactly what he did. He transferred over all of the tax-free money out of the old policy. The loan was wiped clean. He takes what he hadn't borrowed out, brings it to the brand new policy that we were able to set up correctly for him. And now he's off to the races. He's got a massive amount of money that he can be borrowing and using right away. And that's just part one of the story. There is a part two, but I better hush for a minute, Brett. Any questions or comments on any of that? And forgive me if you're saying things I'm not hearing you. You might be on mute just for me. Can you hear me?
Back now, yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you so much. Sorry about that. He did a 1031-5 exchange from cash value to a new policy, which able to restructure the debt or pay off the debt. So eliminate the $6,000. Is that the first thing? Yes.
Yeah. There's about $1 million, $1.2 million of loan that's just gone from his balance sheet. Yep.
That's pretty sweet. And then obviously it probably lowered some of the value of the insurance, or right? Because I mean, it's got to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah, the death benefit for him was an afterthought in the first place. He had other assets and other things, but for him, we're able to minimize the death benefit as much as he wanted, give him what he needs, of course, for life insurance purposes. But yeah, the goal was to massively overfund the policy through a little known rider called a paid up additions rider, and have as little expense on that policy as possible. So we did. We dropped down the death benefit from like $3 million to say 1.5 or whatever million bucks. And for him, that was sufficient.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Basically give him what he needed at this point in his life, as well as get rid of what was the pain of the $6,000 in debt service every month, right? We're in the business of solving problems, not in the business of even selling life insurance or tax referral strategies or real estate, right? He was solving his problem, and the tool was the bank on yourself strategy. Is that a fair summary?
That's correct.